In today's episode, I ruined a man's life. Trash your own manager and department? You get to do a presentation. Racist Karen calls the cops on my cousin, so I get her business closed down. So let's get started. I ruined a man's life. This happened about 4 years ago, but I recently found out how part of my revenge plan panned out, which is what prompted me to post this. I have never shared this with anyone before. Background: my mom has been best friends with Eileen, not her real name, since they were both kids, and Eileen has kind of been like an aunt to me. About 5 years ago, Eileen's husband of more than 25 years surprised her by asking for a divorce. Eileen lived about 6 hours away from my mom at the time, and I lived out of state, so I didn't find out how everything went down until a few months after their divorce was finalized. Unfortunately, Eileen's life kind of spiraled out of control after the separation/divorce. She developed depression and a drinking problem. But my mom and some other childhood friends were able to convince her to move back to her hometown, and then they convinced her to go to rehab. I moved back home shortly before Eileen went to rehab, and because my school/work schedule was pretty flexible, I was able to house sit and take care of some stuff while she was in rehab. The first time I visited her in rehab, I got the whole divorce story, and it was bad. Eileen's ex, Jeff, also not his real name, hadn't talked to Eileen about any problems prior to asking for a divorce, so she just assumed he fell out of love with her. But I was immediately skeptical about the things Eileen told me. First, Jeff, who was an executive at a pharmaceutical company earning mid-six figures, was fired from his job a year before they split up and decided to take a break before looking for another job. It was weird to me that Jeff decided to take a break from work because he'd always been such a workaholic. Eileen hasn't worked in years because of a disability, but she has some property and a trust her parents left her that lets her live a comfortable life without working. Jeff and Eileen lived off money from the trust while he was unemployed. Then, after Jeff said he wanted a divorce, he refused to go to couples therapy or talk about why he wanted the divorce. The only thing he would say was that they had grown apart and that he was sick of being with a woman like Eileen. He said Eileen's mother was right about her. Eileen's mother was a classic narcissist, and she bullied Eileen horribly about her attractiveness, weight, intelligence, etc., which caused a lot of psychological problems that Jeff knows about. Finally, right after the divorce was finalized, Jeff moved out of state, but to a state he didn't have any family or connections in. Jeff's parents are still alive and in their 80s/90s, and Jeff is pretty close to them, so it didn't make any sense to me why Jeff wouldn't move to be closer to them if he wanted to move after the divorce. I didn't say anything to Eileen because I didn't want to upset her, but I thought Jeff might have been having an affair, had orchestrated his unemployment to avoid paying alimony, and then moved out of state to be with his mistress. I just didn't have a way to confirm it at the time. The investigation. Then Eileen asked me to look for a box of Jeff's stuff he had asked her hold for him until he moved into his new apartment. She told me all the info on the box, contents, and his new address was in an email he sent her, and she gave me the password to her computer so I could access the email. This is where I lucked out. It turns out Jeff had used her computer and set up his email on the computer. I accidentally clicked on the app for his email when I was searching for Eileen's email. I decided to take a peek at his email. The first thing I noticed was that he had mostly stopped using that email address 3 years before, which was about 1 year before he was fired. In a folder for digital receipts I found a confirmation email for a dating site, either POF or Match, I can't remember which I think he saved there accidentally. I also found a verification email for a new email address. I started to put together a speculative timeline of what happened. I guessed that about 3 years before, Jeff started an affair, and shortly after, he decided to get a new email address to help keep the affair secret. I wanted to access his dating profile to get more information, so I tried to use the forgot password feature to see if I could generate an email that would allow me to reset the password and log in that way. Unfortunately, the dating site didn't recognize Jeff's old email address. I thought I might be able to get into Jeff's new email using his old email to reset the password, and then, maybe, I could use the new email to get into the dating website. But I didn't want to risk locking Jeff out of his new email and alerting him until I knew more about what he'd done. And here's where I totally lucked out. The email app Jeff downloaded to Eileen's MacBook had a note feature, and super genius Jeff saved some passwords on notes. Most of the passwords weren't helpful, but I did get the password to the dating site and his Twitter and Netflix accounts. I logged into the dating site using his new email address and the password. I was able to read messages Jeff sent to another woman before he broke up with Eileen. The new mistress sent Jeff her email address in one of the messages. I searched Facebook for the mistress's email address and found her profile. I couldn't read the mistress's posts, but she left her photos public. She had recent photos of her and Jeff, so I knew they were still together. She also posted a photo of a construction crew breaking ground on a new home for her and Jeff, which was interesting because I got the impression from Eileen that Jeff didn't have a lot of money after the divorce. Here's where my background is important. At the time, I was attending law school. I moved back to my hometown for one semester for a legal residency, and I had access to Lexis database, specifically, their public records database. I had spent a good portion of one of my summer internships tracking down property records and other assets to help recover judgments for clients, so I knew how to search for public records. The mistress had purchased several acres in a wealthy suburb several months before Jeff filed for divorce, and there was no mortgage listed on the record. I'd already found the mistress's LinkedIn page, so I knew she worked as an executive assistant before she moved out of state with Jeff. She didn't advertise her salary, but I doubted she could have afforded the property with her salary alone. It's possible she had money outside her salary, but I suspected Jeff gave her money to purchase the land before he filed for divorce. I also found an updated record in Lexis showing Jeff and the mistress as joint owners of the property. I called the county recorder office to confirm ownership of the property, dates, etc. The mistress had filed a quitclaim just 5 weeks after Jeff's divorce was finalized. I was still hesitant to try to log into Jeff's new email, so I decided to check his old email again to see if there was anything else I should investigate before moving to the new email. I didn't find anything, but I noticed that several passwords in his notes were the same. I decided to try to log into his new email using the same password he used for the dating site. I figured the two accounts were created around the same time, so if he had recycled a password, that was the most likely candidate. It worked. His new email was a gold mine. Because this story is already getting ridiculously long, I'll list some of the relevant stuff I found. Jeff hadn't been fired from his old job. He quit and lied to Eileen. I found an email from his admin asking where to have payroll, send his last check and details about a goodbye party for him. Some emails between Jeff and a boat repair person mentioning a leak somewhere on one side of the sailboat near the engine compartment. The repair guy couldn't find the source of the leak, but he talked about current and future problems with mold and the engine on that side. Emails between Jeff and a boat broker, which included the email address of buyers farther down in the string. An emailed report from the boat inspector which didn't include the leak or any mold damage or potential damage to the engine. Emails between Jeff and his contractor about changes made to the new house's sunroom, something about a 3-season sunroom versus a 4-season sunroom, and the construction needing to be modified to deal with the weight of snow. Emails between Jeff and the mistress. They had married. The mistress/Jeff shared a calendar. Some FL*Rudy emails between Jeff and another woman. Emails with info on Jeff's new employer. I downloaded all the important emails and their attachments and started thinking about a revenge plan. Revenge. To my mind, everything was fair game. He lied about being fired, so I wanted him fired from his new job. I suspected he hid his money before his separation from Eileen to help pay for his new house, so I wanted him to lose his house. He cheated, so I wanted to destroy his new relationship. Anything I could do about the boat was a bonus. The easiest place to start was the boat. I had no idea if the source of the leak was found and repaired, or if the leak was verbally disclosed to the buyer, but I figured Jeff was a lying jerk, so odds were fair he hid the info from the new buyer. I sent the emails between Jeff and the repairman and another copy of the inspection to the buyer. I searched Jeff's county court website 5-6 months later and found out the buyers filed a suit against Jeff and the broker and inspector. I couldn't figure out how to take or destroy Jeff's house, so I settled for contacting the county inspector's office to complain about the sunroom not being up to code. This is actually what prompted me to write this post, because I just found out some details about what happened with the county inspectors. Keep in mind, I heard about this from a third party years after the fact, so I don't know all the details. It turns out the sunroom was code compliant, but the inspector did find a workshop/workroom attached to the detached garage that wasn't on the original permit/plans. The workshop had a bathroom that the contractor attached to the property's septic system after the initial inspection. A mutual friend of Eileen and Jeff told Eileen and me, and he guessed this was a big deal because the size of the septic system they installed wasn't sized to handle the additional input, but I don't know for sure. Jeff had to pay a fine and the workshop had to be removed. This ended up causing construction delays, which will become relevant below. As for destroying Jeff's marriage, my first impulse was to send the new wife the flirty emails between Jeff and the other woman, but when I searched for that woman on social media, I couldn't find anything. I had no way of knowing if the new wife knew the other woman and would think that the emails weren't important or evidence of an affair. Then, I played around with the idea of updating Jeff's dating profile and sending stuff to his wife. But it would take too long to manufacture a fake relationship with real dates and times, and I was worried that Jeff might get an email alert from the dating site that would clue him in. I ended up just risking that the new wife wouldn't know the other woman. I pretended to be someone concerned about an affair between Jeff and the new woman. Overall, I kept the accusation vague, but I did say Jeff and the new girl went out to eat and to the movies on a few dates. Jeff's shared calendar said the new wife was out of town. I couldn't come up with a way to get Jeff fired. I rechecked his email and calendar over several weeks looking for something I could use to get him fired. Eventually my legal residency got too busy to devote much time to revenge, so I decided to just let it go. Eileen recently reconnected with a friend she shared with Jeff, and that friend gave Eileen an update on Jeff. Eileen shared the details with me, and that's what reminded me of what I did and prompted this story. It turned out that I didn't need to worry about sabotaging Jeff's career. By luck, the woman Jeff had been emailing was actually his assistant at his new job, and Jeff's new boss was his brother-in-law. Jeff and his new wife actually moved to her hometown, so she could be close to her family, and so Jeff could go to work for his new brother-in-law. I have no idea if Jeff actually was cheating. He told the mutual friend that passed the story on to Eileen that they hadn't been having an affair. It didn't matter to new wife though. Because she and Jeff got together when Jeff was already married, she didn't have a lot of trust for Jeff. She didn't believe Jeff's denials when I sent the email about him having an affair. She filed for divorce. And Jeff's brother-in-law boss fired him. And since the construction was delayed, the new house wasn't finished when Jeff and new wife divorced. They had to sell an unfinished home, and Jeff took a big financial hit. Finally, these weren't part of my larger revenge plan, but I am pretty petty, so I took the box of Jeff's stuff, mostly photographs, and threw them away. I told Eileen they must have been lost in the move. Signed both of Jeff's email addresses for a bunch of spam, newsletters, mailing lists, etc. Deleted his Netflix watch list. Posted, retweeted, and liked a bunch of P*RN on his Twitter account and deleted all the accounts he was following. The ending. I never told Eileen what I did because I wanted her to have plausible deniability, and I didn't want to interfere with her recovery. She doesn't know about the boat lawsuit or the Netflix/Twitter stuff, but she did take satisfaction from his divorce and job loss. I probably would have let it all go if Jeff had just cheated, because I had always really liked Jeff. I always thought he was nice, but I was obviously wrong about him. Nice people don't weaponize childhood abuse to mentally torture their wives. As far as I'm concerned, Jeff deserved everything I did to him. Trash your own manager and department? You get to do a presentation. True story, names changed, years ago, yada, yada, yada. Chad was an engineer with a planning and support department for a portion of his company's infrastructure that impacted virtually every other part of the company. Unfortunately, Chad was a real A** hole. During less than a year with the company, he had thoroughly trashed everyone in his department to anyone who would listen. He talked about their incompetence, their screw-ups, which were generally minor, and most importantly their failure to properly support the very mission-critical infrastructure they were responsible for. Every hiccup that occurred, however minor, was used as ammunition. What Chad told everyone who would listen eventually made it up to managers and directors throughout the company. That wasn't enough though. Chad made the mistake of trashing his own director, who was also his manager. Over the next few months there was no one even remotely involved with his department who didn't know what Chad was doing, including that manager. Chad's manager and director was Tim, a pretty crappy manager by most measures. He paid about 40% less than the industry average, and had a staff of B and C players because of it, but he nevertheless expected absolute dedication from that staff. If he could have had them wash his car and pick up his dry cleaning, those things would have been added to their job descriptions. Tim was also pretty poor when it came to understanding what his own staff did, and routinely made things up about their work while talking to other people. Everyone involved knew he was full of crap, because what he said made no sense at all. Most rolled their eyes, but people also knew that Tim was a force to be reckoned with. Despite his shortcomings as a manager, the one place Tim excelled was corporate politics. He was able to consistently come through failures without a scratch when those failures would have sidelined anyone else. Tim would deftly play opponents off one another, then stand back and watch the fireworks. He had been at it for years and seemed to have a Teflon coating. Crap that stuck to everyone around him would slide right off. Tim, of course, knew exactly what Chad had been saying. Eventually, Chad's trashing of his own department became so severe, and their reputation so tarnished, that a large directors' meeting was called to discuss the situation. The other department directors were out for blood. Enter Tim's pro-revenge. Tim tasked Chad, the very person responsible for the company gossip that resulted in the high-level meeting, with the job of putting together and then presenting a formal defense against his own gossip. Chad had to spend the next couple of weeks creating a formal presentation and repeatedly submitting it to Tim for approval. The meeting rolled around and Chad was forced to stand up in front of a large group of company directors and managers and formally defend his own manager and department. Everyone at the meeting knew they were only there because of what Chad had been saying, and they sat back and watched him tear himself apart and prove the things he, himself, had been telling everyone were flat-out lies. Of course, Tim and his department came through completely unscathed, but Chad was thoroughly discredited throughout the company and knew it. He left that company for another within 6 months of that meeting and last was heard badmouthing everyone involved with his new company. Racist Karen calls the cops on my cousin, so I get her business closed down. Background: my cousin, 23, recently opened up her own salon. From a young age, she taught herself how to thread/wax eyebrows and developed an interest in makeup and hair. Everyone in our extended family would go to her before events and on a monthly basis for their threading, waxing, hair and makeup needs. In 2020, she had a full-time job, non-salon related, but decided to renovate the basement of her home to create a small salon space. She now spends her free time taking clients in her at-home salon, and there's nothing but great reviews. Her sister helped with the renovations and now helps her with marketing the business, social media, community pages, and I help with the finances, budgeting, price setting. We all support her and are really proud of her. The salon is our baby. We're now in the middle of a pandemic and this greatly affected her salon business. As a result, she implemented safety measures and our small team made sure to keep up with COVID regulations in our city. This included having one customer inside at a time, doing temperature checks, making masks/face shields and gloves mandatory, wiping down the salon after each client, etc. Also, when our city was in lockdown, the salon was closed as it is not an essential service. Incident: our city is once again in lockdown since the end of December to the end of January. The salon has been closed since the lockdown began. The salon's social media pages had been updated to let the current clientele know that the salon is closed. Now comes the Karen. Karen sees a community post from October detailing a discount that the salon was having on a certain package we offer. She comments on the post saying that she can't believe the salon is open in the middle of a lockdown when her salon has to be closed. This is important for later. Karen fails to notice that this post was made in October, when salons were allowed to operate as long as they followed safety regulations. Karen doesn't bother checking more recent posts indicating that the salon was closed. My cousin doesn't see her reply at this time. The next day, 2 police officers show up at my cousin's door while she's at a doctor's appointment. The officers ask for my cousin and my aunt lets them know that she's not home right now. My aunt does not speak English very well and lets the officers know that she would call my cousin and ask her to come home. Maybe the officers didn't believe her, but they insisted on coming inside the home. My aunt had already called my cousin as she was worried. My cousin asked what it was about, but my aunt didn't know. My cousin then asked if they had a warrant for anything. When she found out they didn't, she told her mom not to let them come inside, and that she would be there in about 20 minutes. My cousin began driving home when my aunt called her to let her know that they simply left. Hearing this, my cousin was less worried and decided to go grocery shopping as planned before heading home. Turns out, the officers came back half an hour later and once again demanded to see my cousin. My aunt called my cousin again and asked her to come home, but in the 20 minutes she took to come home, the officers were gone. They had left a card and asked her to call back. My cousin managed to get a hold of the officers and was told that someone had reported her business. They claimed that she was operating during the lockdown and they had proof. My cousin knew this wasn't true as the salon had been closed for quite a while. By now, my cousin had seen the comment from earlier and mentioned that she knew exactly what their so-called proof was, but the post in question was from October. My cousin was very upset as this post was not even close to being actual evidence of her operating now, in January. She was also very upset that they insisted on coming inside the house with no cause or warrant when they could clearly see that my aunt does not understand the language very well. At the end of the conversation, the police officer apologized to my cousin, and we thought it was the end of it. You must be wondering how we know that Karen was the one who called the cops. Well, she told us. The next day, my cousin received a message she realized was from the woman who commented on the post. Karen decided to pretend like she's a customer. Karen, can I book an appointment? My cousin, hey love, we are currently closed due to the lockdown. Once the lockdown is over, we will be more than happy to book you in. Karen, oh my GF was there yesterday, my apologies. My cousin, you must have gotten the date wrong. The salon is not taking clients until the lockdown is over. Thank you. Karen, NP, but I didn't get the date wrong, lol. I also know the police came due to you being open. Take care. My cousin, I'm not going to sit here and entertain your boring life. Maybe for a change you can find another hobby rather than spreading lies and wasting people's time, including the police's time. Or even better, find an actual job. Have a good night. Karen, I own my own spa that's closed, as should yours be. My mom is the one who called the cops. You are not entertaining me at all. Go back to your own country instead of F**king with ours. My cousin decided to block her at this point. My cousin was happy this was all over. Her sister and I were still outraged at the racist comment and how someone could make up lies about a small business that led to the cops terrifying my aunt. When my cousin told me about Karen, the fact that she had her own spa really stood out. I did some digging. Revenge. Turns out Karen runs her own spa out of her house. Doing some more snooping, I found reviews from her clients on her business page that were posted on days that the city was under lockdown. The reviews could be from clients who received services before the lockdown and only now had a chance to write a review. To be sure, I found Karen's Instagram page. I decided to use her own trick against her. I created a new account with a generic name and followed her page, so she couldn't see that I was related to my cousin. I then messaged her to ask about the prices for her services. Me, hey, I love your pics. I was wondering how much you charge. Karen, hey girl, thank you so much. What service are you after? Me, I'm really interested in the BB Glow facial. Karen, that's awesome. My biggest seller for sure. Normally it's $125, but it's on BOGO, so you pay for one session and get two. Me, that's such a great deal compared to others. When is your next available date? Karen, where are you located? I can't have people come to me in lockdown, but I travel to my clients. Karen was not operating from her home location due to lockdown restrictions, but was traveling to her clients' homes, which is still against regulations. I then made up a lie about my home not having adequate space and asked for her address, so we could meet up at my friend's place somewhere between her and I's locations. She foolishly told me her address. During this time, I also tried joining other community groups that she was a part of. In one particular group, people in the community were promoting their small businesses. She had recently made a post about discounts on her services for the month of January. I immediately went online and submitted a report about her business still operating, including screenshots, her address, full name, etc. A few days passed by and I had forgotten to check up on it as I was busy with life again. I saw the incident report number on a sticky note I had on my desk and decided to check in. Apparently, this was not Karen's first offense. Karen had already been fined $750 for having a client in her home during the first lockdown in my city. After being fined, she decided to change her business model and go to the client's home instead. Now, she was fined $10,000. I was still following her on Instagram, so I decided to check it out. She had gone on a rant about how she was going to do very bad things to the person who reported her. She also mentioned that she was no longer allowed to run her business. I'm not sure what type of ban the regional police put on her, but I immediately deleted the account and exited the groups I had joined earlier. At the end of the day, Karen got what she deserved, and I fulfilled my dream of pretending to be Sherlock Holmes. Thanks for watching.